Let's start with a text. Everyone's a critic. This is from Michael. Not you two, he writes. That's you two, as in me too, not as in Bono and The Edge and the rest of them. Not you two. The drumbeat of criticism over U-turns, which are actually signs of collegiate and listening policy making, is designed to destabilise this young government. The right-wing press still can't stand the fact they lost. As someone brilliant once said, there's no point in having a mind if you can't change it. Who can spot the U2 link with that line? Michael is very kindly and slightly sarcastically referring to me, but it was actually Edward de Bono, who was a philosopher before he joined U2. It was Edward de Bono who actually made that observation first. That's a bit niche, that, isn't it? If you've got to explain a joke, it probably isn't working. I hope Michael's right. Okay, I hope Michael's right. I hope that I have fallen victim to chatter and noise. And I can begin today's first phone-in by listing all the things that are stacked against Keir Starmer. Here's a really weird thing that I've noticed. And, hey, I could be wrong, so by all means, bung me a text. 03456060973 for WhatsApp, 84850 for texts, if you can find one. But I haven't been able to find a single compelling defence of the welfare bill. I know the rationale behind it is that there is a necessity to save money, and also that there is a failure in the system to help people who want to work but currently can't because of the odds that are stacked against them to be addressed, so people can end up languishing against their wishes on benefits, disability and sickness benefits. I understand all of that, but I haven't seen a single compelling defence of the detail of this bill. We only really scratched the surface of it yesterday, but what became immediately clear is the vulnerability of people with fluctuating conditions. The near impossibility, but I don't believe impossibility, but the the enormous difficulty of framing a system, a working system, a system of work which can accommodate people who don't know until they get up in the morning, and often not even then, whether they're going to be capable of working that day or how many hours they're going to be able to do that day. So a fluctuating condition which will include many people listening to this programme and far beyond, people who are contacting their MPs to tell them that they're terrified. And listen, you can send me texts. I'm in a surprisingly wonderful mood today, so you can send me all the nasty texts you like about scroungers and freeloaders and how we've got to get rid of them and none of them deserve it, and you know someone who went to school with someone whose mum was married to someone who was a right old scrounger, and all of that malarkey. But that doesn't actually change the simple reality that an awful lot of the most vulnerable people in the country believe that they're about to be punched in the face by a government that they thought would be on their side. And if I were to make that list of things that are stacked against Keir Starmer, I would include the fact that he doesn't really have any cheerleaders in the media. You might think I am, but that is a terrible reflection of, in the same way that, what's his chops in the Daily Mail, Richard Littlejohn, described me as hard left last week, which I imagine has caused an enormous intake of breath among people who are actually hard left. But it's all relative, isn't it? If you think someone who isn't sticking the boot into Keir Starmer every single day for reasons that they probably can't explain to you is a cheerleader, then it's only because of what everybody else is doing all the time. And so one of the things stacked against Keir Starmer is the absolute absence, really, of support for his government from a tribal or a partisan position in the media. One of the reasons I like him, and this is damning him with faint praise, is because of who he isn't. He isn't Liz Truss. He isn't Boris Johnson. He isn't David Cameron. He isn't Jeremy Corbyn. He isn't any of the people who were either incapable of running a party or incapable of running a country. But that's not a particularly glowing endorsement, is it? Who's your favourite? Oh, well, I don't know if I'm just glad it's not any of that. But he keeps the terrible people out of power. He has kept the terrible people out of power. Probably a slightly unfair analysis of Rishi Sunak, that, but we'll leave that, as we said yesterday, for the history teachers. History writers and history teachers of the future. But if I can't find a single cogent and compelling defence, so I'm just going to check my inbox actually to see if you've sent me any, of the bill in its current form. And the fact that over 120 Labour MPs are minded to reject it is pretty huge, politically speaking. It is not a leadership ending moment, but it is a deeply damaging prospect of defeat or another surrender, another U-turn, another reverse, whatever it may be. And if no one, apart from this, let me find you something that these are the only people that that think that they're in support of the bill. And I can't imagine that they're people who are ever going to vote for the Labour Party. But here's Nikki writing, your privilege is clouding your judgment here. The number of people who don't want to work is far more significant than you allow for. So there is a perception that this is aimed at scroungers. No one is claiming that it's aimed at scroungers. So there's the second big thing that's stacked against him, is that the nature of coverage, the nature of political coverage and the ownership in many ways of our national media has skewed the proposal entirely, because someone like Nikki comes away thinking this is all about getting rid of the scroungers, so somehow whip-cracking people into work or leaving them to starve if they refuse. Yes, there's so many scroungers, and that is a widespread perception. It's been probably the first lesson I learned presenting this show was the ease with which people can be persuaded that everybody on any benefit is a scrounger. Do you remember when everyone would wang on endlessly about flat-screen televisions? People were still wanging on endlessly about flat-screen televisions long after it became impossible to buy a television in this country that wasn't flat-screen. I had a sort of road to Damascus moment at the tip of all places. You know, the pile in the corner of all the electronic goods. I remember every single television is a flat-screen television. So we've now reached the point in human history where the only flat-screen televisions that you're throwing out are flat-screen televisions, because it's impossible to buy one that isn't. But still they wanged on. So the perception there is that it's designed to hit scroungers, and the reality of the Labour rebellion is that it's going to hit people who are the opposite of scroungers. It's going to hit people who are among the most vulnerable. It's going to hurt people, the people that we spoke to yesterday. We are, however, skint. If this was a household, then we would be on our uppers. You know, if this was a household, we'd be living on muesli. The scale of the debt, the servicing of the debt is off the charts. And it is a little bit simplistic to suggest that if you need to raise or save money, then the way to do it is to go after the people who've got the most, not the people who've got the least. Listen, I have an inner undergraduate that's very near the surface some mornings, and it's quite near the surface today. This madness, this mad marriage to the idea of not having any tax rises, while simultaneously reducing welfare among disabled and poorly people, is extraordinary. But it is where we are. So somewhere between those two observations lies the truth. There is as far I've still got a tickly throat. If you were listening yesterday, it's better than it was, but until I start, I mean, I know what you're thinking. Why don't you do shorter monologues, and then your throat will probably recover quicker? You've got a point there. You don't have to cheer quite so enthusiastically at the prospect. So it's impossible to find a really compelling defence of this bill. But at the same time, it's impossible to find pretty much anybody who is going to take a bullet for Keir Starmer. It's the number of MPs that have signed up to oppose it that worries me the most. That convinces me the most that he has really, really messed up. And that is, in case you're wondering where this phone-in is going to go, it's too early to contemplate a leadership change. This is why Michael's cross with me, even for talking about it. And I agree, but it is going incredibly badly. I don't buy the idea. I would do with one or two, but if you've got two of the biggest things they've done, the winter fuel and the welfare, you can use the word collegiate until you're blue in the face. You can tell me how uplifting and heartening it is to have leaders that actually listen, but from now till Christmas. But these are clangers of epic proportions that have been dropped upon the feet of the people who introduced them. These are huge missteps and mistakes. This is poor judgment. And I want to know why you think it's happening. I want to know what is going wrong. The Ming vase that was so successfully carried across the ice rink hasn't been dropped, it's been delivered. The Ming vase arrives on its plinth the minute Keir Starmer gets into power, gets into Downing Street. And because of that factor one, the massed ranks of the UK media being so obviously stacked against him, we don't know much about the good stuff. Most obviously for me, probably the workers' rights and the beginning of a renationalisation programme on the railways. But we do know that two of the biggest issues, two of the biggest things that they've done, the winter fuel allowance and the welfare bill, are both, well, one has already been abandoned and the other one I think is, well, it's either going to be abandoned or he's going to get spanked in the House of Commons on Tuesday. So what is going wrong? And sometimes, can I tell you a secret? I think I may have told you this before, but the vaguer the question I ask you, sometimes the harder it is to get good answers, the harder it is to get interesting answers. So I'm a little bit allergic to vague questions, but sometimes they're the only questions that work because you're stepping so far back from the detail in order to take in the entire vista, the entire landscape of modern British politics. How badly is it going? And polling today has Farage's outfit as the largest party if there were to be a general election tomorrow. You can't rule out that possibility. I'm afraid if we've learned anything over the last 10 years, we've learned that people do not learn from history. They do not learn from the past. So, the idea that someone that was pro-Brexit, pro-Boris Johnson, pro-Liz Truss, let's have another go. Let's smash our head against the brick wall for a fourth, fifth, sixth time in the hope that this time the wall will break as opposed to our heads. That is evidence that 1 year in, and it's only a year, things are going really badly for this government, according to both party management and public opinion. Have a crack at defending it for me, please. I don't think you will. That's why it's not the phone-in today. All LBC presenters can throw open their switchboard at the top of the show and be absolutely inundated with people who are terrified of the impacts of the welfare bill. It's important and it's interesting, but it's a bit easy, frankly, and it's less easy to step back from the detail, as I say, and try and work out why they're getting it all so wrong, if indeed you think they are. So there it is. Why is it going so badly? 03456060973. Can I ask both of those questions at the same? How badly is it going? 03456060973, and why is it going so bad? I think it's going really bad. There you go. I'm a caller now. Hello, James. First-time caller, love the show. I think it's going really badly. I can't believe that they have managed to alienate so many of their traditional voters, but that you could chalk up as teething trouble. They're also now alienating their own MPs. That these are the people who had to sell slices of their soul on the doorsteps of this country in order to defend the winter fuel bill, and then he pulled the rug from under them and admitted that all the people criticising it were right all along, so they got rid of it. And now I'm being inundated by callers telling me that the welfare bill is terrifying to them and is, some of the statistics show, going to push children into poverty, something the Labour Party exists to eradicate, something the Labour Party exists to get rid of. I'm getting a few texts, more than usual. I'm not going to put you in idiot's corner from people who know someone who's got a blue badge that they don't deserve. That's not going to be affected by the welfare bill. If your neighbour's got a fraudulent disability badge, then it's fraudulent. They bought it off someone down the pub. They're not in receipt of welfare. I don't know. Maybe that is one for idiot's corner. But why is it? Why do you think things are going so badly for Keir Starmer, specifically? Not the Labour government, not the Labour Party, but for Keir Starmer specifically. Can you join Michael in arguing that he is simply, once again, the victim of a hideously biased news landscape? I reject that analysis. Some of these mistakes are avoidable. All of these mistakes are self-inflicted. So what is going wrong? Hit the numbers now. You will get through, because it's a vague question. So you've got a better chance of getting through on this than if I ask you to ring in and explain to me exactly what you know about Iran's nuclear capabilities. 0345 6060973. Do you agree with me that things are going very badly? If not, why not? And if you do agree with me, why? What can you put your finger on first as reasons why these self-inflicted catastrophes seem to be becoming a feature rather than a glitch?